The town of Oak Ridge was small, its streets lined with modest homes and a bustling marketplace at its heart. In this town lived Felicia Adams, a widow with 3 children to feed. Life had not been kind to her since the passing of her husband, but she faced each day with quiet determination. Each morning, long before the sun rose, she would rise from her small straw mat, gather the freshest vegetables from her small garden, and prepare for the long journey to the market. The weight of the basket on her head was nothing compared to the burdens she carried in her heart. She had no luxuries, no savings, only the meager earnings she made selling vegetables, barely enough to keep her children from hunger. Yet despite her hardships, Felicia remained kind. She greeted every customer with a warm smile, never allowing life's struggles to harden her heart. She believed in helping others, even when she had little herself. One sweltering afternoon, as Felicia arranged her vegetables, her eyes fell on a young boy standing by the roadside. He wore a crumpled school uniform. His shoes were worn out, and his small hands covered his face as he cried. People walked past him, too caught up in their own affairs to notice. But Felicia couldn't ignore him. Something about his loneliness, his despair, struck her deeply. She wiped the sweat from her brow and approached him gently. "My child, why are you crying?" The boy lifted his tear-streaked face. "They sent me out of the exam hall," he whispered. Felicia's heart clenched. "Why? I couldn't pay my school fees," the boy mumbled, his voice trembling. "The principal wouldn't let me take my exams without the money." Felicia studied him carefully, her heart aching. She understood the pain of helplessness, the sting of being unable to provide. Without hesitation, she reached into her pocket and pulled out the few coins she had earned that day. "Come with me," she said, determination in her voice. Brian hesitated, but something in Felicia's warm eyes reassured him. He followed her through the bustling market and down the dusty streets to his school. When they arrived at the principal's office, she knocked firmly on the door. A stern-looking man answered. "Yes?" Felicia met his gaze without fear. "I want to pay this boy's school fees." The principal eyed her suspiciously. "Are you his mother?" She shook her head. "No, but that shouldn't matter." For a moment, there was silence. Then, with a sigh, the principal took the money. "All right, he may return to class." Brian looked up at Felicia with wide, disbelieving eyes. You spent your money on me," she nodded, offering a gentle smile. "One day, when you grow up, do the same for someone else." Brian's heart swelled with gratitude. Before he could speak, Felicia had already turned away, disappearing into the marketplace. Brian returned to the exam hall, his heart pounding. As he gripped his pen, he thought about the woman who had saved him. If not for her, he would have been outside, lost and hopeless. That evening, he went home to his parents, Linda and Michael Anderson. His mother was mending clothes, and his father sat exhausted from his long day at the construction site. His mother noticed his troubled face. "My son, what's wrong?" Tears welled up in Brian's eyes. He dropped his school bag and ran to his mother, embracing her tightly. "Mom, Dad, something happened today," he whispered. He told them everything. Linda and Michael, overwhelmed with gratitude, knew they had to find the woman who had helped their son. The next day, Linda and Michael went to the market with Brian. They searched for Felicia among the vendors and found her arranging her vegetables. Just as she did every morning, Linda stepped forward, her voice filled with emotion. "You are the woman who helped my son." Felicia looked up, startled. "Oh yes, but it was nothing." Michael shook his head. "It was everything. You saved our son's future." Felicia smiled humbly. "I only did what I'd want someone to do for my own children if I were in need." Linda and Michael offered her money as a token of their gratitude, but Felicia refused. "I cannot accept this. Help someone else as I did." Linda wiped a tear from her eye, moved by Felicia's selflessness. Years passed, and Brian never forgot the woman who had changed his life. He studied tirelessly, determined to make her proud. When he graduated with honors, he knew exactly what he had to do. He returned to the marketplace, not as the helpless boy Felicia had once helped, but as a man ready to repay her kindness. Felicia was still there, her hair streaked with gray, still selling vegetables to survive. When Brian approached her, she barely recognized him. "Felicia Adams," he said with a smile. "Do you remember me?" Felicia squinted, then gasped. "Brian?" Tears filled her eyes as she realized the young, successful man before her was the same boy she had once saved. Brian held out an envelope. "This is for you," Felicia frowned. "What is it?" "A new home, a new life. You helped me once. Now, let me help you." Overwhelmed, Felicia wept. The kindness she had sown so many years ago had come full circle. Felicia moved into her new home, never having to struggle again. But true to her nature, she continued helping others in need. Brian, now a successful businessman, established a foundation in Felicia's honor, ensuring that no child in Oak Ridge would ever be denied education due to poverty. And so, the woman who had once given everything to help a boy in need saw her kindness ripple into the world, changing countless lives forever. This story captures the journey of kindness, sacrifice, and the power of giving. Felicia stood frozen, staring at the envelope in Brian's hand. Her calloused fingers trembled as she reached out, hesitating before touching it. Could this really be happening? I don't understand, she whispered. Brian smiled warmly. "It's a small gift. A thank you for what you did for me years ago." Felicia shook her head, her heart heavy. "But Brian, I never gave expecting anything in return." "I know," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "That's what makes it so special. But now it's my turn." Felicia looked around at the marketplace, the same stalls she had known for years, the familiar faces of vendors struggling just as she had. She thought of her children, now grown, still struggling to make ends meet. I don't know what to say," she admitted. "Say yes," Brian encouraged. "Say you'll allow yourself the chance to rest." A lump formed in Felicia's throat. After all these years, could she finally accept help? It had been decades since Felicia had lived anywhere other than her small, crumbling house. When Brian took her to the new home, her breath caught in her throat. It wasn't extravagant, but it was sturdy and beautiful. A cozy 2-bedroom home with a garden in the back, a kitchen she could actually cook in, and a proper bed instead of the worn-out mat she had slept on for years. Tears streamed down her face as she stepped inside. "Brian, this is too much," Brian chuckled. "It's the least I could do." Felicia ran her fingers over the smooth walls, feeling the weight of all her struggles begin to lift. For the first time in a long while, she felt something she had almost forgotten: peace. Despite having a new home, Felicia found herself unable to simply rest. She was grateful beyond words, but a nagging thought tugged at her heart. There were still so many people struggling, just as she once had. One morning, she walked through the marketplace, but this time, not as a vendor. Instead, she spoke with the other women who worked tirelessly to feed their families, the children who ran barefoot through the streets, and the elderly who had no one to care for them. Brian watched from a distance, smiling. He knew she wouldn't stop giving, and that was what made her truly remarkable. Determined to do more, Felicia approached Brian with an idea. "There are many women like me," she said. "Widows, single mothers, people who work hard but can never get ahead. I want to help them." Brian nodded thoughtfully. "Tell me what you need." Felicia hesitated before speaking. A small fund to help struggling vendors start their own businesses. A little support can change everything. Brian smiled. "Let's do it." And so, the Felicia Adams Fund was born, a program to help struggling women and families get a fresh start. It was just the beginning. News of the fund spread quickly, and soon women from all over the town came forward, hoping for a chance to rebuild their lives. With Brian's help, Felicia arranged small loans, helped women find better stalls in the market, and even set up a workshop to teach basic business skills. The marketplace, once filled with weary faces, began to change. Vendors now had hope, children had better opportunities, and families found stability. For the first time, Oak Ridge was not just a town, it was a community. Felicia never forgot the reason all of this had started: Brian's school fees. One day, she visited the same school where she had once paid for his exam. She met the new principal and asked, "How many children are turned away because they can't afford to pay?" The answer broke her heart. Determined to change this, Felicia and Brian worked together to create scholarships for children in need. Now no child would ever have to stand by the roadside, crying because they couldn't afford an education. As the years passed, Felicia's name became well known, not just in Oak Ridge, but in neighboring towns as well. People spoke of her kindness, of how she had once given everything she had to help a boy she didn't even know. Felicia, however, remained humble. "It was never about me," she would say. "It was about doing the right thing," and so her legacy grew not through riches, but through the countless lives she touched. Despite her success, Felicia never changed. She still woke up early, still walked through the market, still stopped to talk to those in need. Brian often laughed. "Felicia, you don't have to work anymore," she would smile. "Helping is not work, it is purpose," and in that, she found her greatest joy. One day, a young woman approached Felicia. "You don't know me," she said, "but years ago, you helped my father, Brian Anderson." Felicia gasped. "Brian's daughter?" "Yes," the woman said. "And I wanted to meet the woman who made my father the man he is today." Tears filled Felicia's eyes. The cycle of kindness had come full circle once again. Brian decided it was time to honor Felicia in a way she never expected. On her birthday, he gathered the town for a celebration. Felicia walked into a hall filled with people, vendors, mothers, children, all whose lives she had touched. And for the first time, she realized just how much her simple act of kindness had changed the world. As Felicia grew older, her heart remained as warm as ever. She watched as the fund expanded, as more children went to school, as more families found security. She had never asked for recognition. But in the end, she had received something even greater: love. On a quiet evening, Felicia sat with Brian, now a middle-aged man. "You know," she said softly, "true wealth isn't in money, it's in the lives we touch." Brian smiled. "I learned that from you." And with that, Felicia knew her mission was complete. Felicia passed away peacefully, surrounded by the people she had once saved. Her funeral was not a sad event, but a celebration of her life, a life spent giving, loving, and believing in the good of others, and in every child she helped, in every family she supported, her spirit lived on. Years later, a statue was built in the town square, a tribute to the woman who had changed so many lives. At the bottom, a simple inscription read, "Kindness costs nothing, but it changes everything." And so, the legacy of Felicia Adams lived on, proving that even the smallest acts of kindness could shape the world in ways beyond imagination.